Hey Sojo, it's Mrs. Mitchell again, and this time I want to talk to you about our online databases. Those are Utah's Online Library, and they are collections of articles that come from scholarly journals, journals of professional people who do research on the topics that they are trying to teach you about. So first of all, let's start with the beginning. Anytime you want to do library information, start at the school website, sojomiddle.org, and you're going to scroll down just a little bit and look for the play button that says Media Center. Click on that, and that takes you to our home page. And here under Student Helps, you'll see Utah's Online Library. So go ahead and click on that if you're following along. Now, if you're at school, you won't see this particular page because it knows the IP address of the computers at school, and so it'll go straight to the regular home page. But since you're here at home and I'm at home, you need the username and the password. So I'm going to go to the Utah student login and click on that. Now the login always stays the same, not that. The login is always online. The password changes every year in June, I believe. And I'm not going to tell you what the new password is right now, but I've given that to your teacher and they can share that with you. We are not allowed to write down the password somewhere that the whole world can see it. So this video is not private, so I'm not going to tell you what the password is, but you will be able to get that from your teacher. So go ahead and log in, and here is the launch page for Utah's Online Library. Now we're not going to go through all of these different tools, but we are going to talk about two of the major databases. Now, if I were a ninth grader and I were doing country research, then Culturegrams is where I would want to go. But because we are doing other kinds of research, there are two databases that I'm going to be interested in going to. I would suggest that you use EBSCO High Schools and the Gale Reference Collection for high school. If you were sixth graders or fifth graders, maybe our seventh graders, I would say use the middle school, but I think that all of you have the skills that you need to use the high school level materials. So let's start with EBSCO. Click on EBSCO High Schools, and here we have a lot of different databases that I can choose from. And you're more than welcome to look at each one of these and decide if one of them in particular is what you need to be looking at. So for example, if I'm doing research on the person, I can go straight to the Biography Reference Center. If I'm doing something for one of my social studies classes, then maybe I want to go to the History Reference Center. And then down over here is our Science Reference Center. Now there is, however, Explora, which is a way to look at all of these databases at one time. And that's what we're going to do just because it brings up everything. And I don't know what in particular you're going to be doing your research on. And it can be helpful to go to one of these specific databases because if I'm in the Science Reference Center, then I'm not going to get, like the George Washington stuff or the sports stuff that might be in some of these other databases. So, but let's just start with Explora. And let that come up. And then very simply, the easiest things to do is to go here and type in a couple of words telling the computer what you're looking for. So let's say, for example, I want to look at the greenhouse effect. Spell it correctly, of course, and I'm just going to click on search. Now, before I start looking at all of these articles, notice I have 5,652. which is actually pretty good. Just to show you what I mean, let's go over here and open up the general internet. And if I type in greenhouse effect over here, then I have, well, it's not telling me how many resources I have. The internet used to tell me how many different choices I had, and it's probably somewhere in the middles. Let's not worry, in the millions. Let's not worry about that. Let's go back over here. So 5,652. Now notice right here, this is limit to full text over here on the left-hand side, and it's from 1977 to 2002. So now I have to decide, what is it that I'm looking for about the greenhouse effect? Do I want to see what the greenhouse effect was back in the 1970s when we first learned about it? Do I want to know what the greenhouse effect is currently doing for our world? And so I can tell the computer that I want maybe things from the last 10 years. So I'm going to change this to 2010. And that will limit things. Let's go back. I've run into a problem with the firewall. Let's try this again. Okay, so let's go to 2000. Maybe I confused it. There we go. Okay, so now I've got things for the last 20 years. Now that that works successfully, let's see if we can limit it to 2010. There we go. So now I'm down to about 1,400 articles. So now let's look at these, what we have here. Notice right now, all results is showing, but I have magazine articles, I have books, I have news, I have biographies, I have reviews, academic journals, and encyclopedias and primary source documents. So some of these are going to be more useful for me than others. First of all, those academic journals. I definitely want to look at those. And then I want those magazine articles, and I want the news. Now you should talk to your teacher because maybe they want you to stick with academic journals. But the nice thing about using Utah's online library is that they've already done a lot of the work for you. They've gone through and they have proven that they proved that these articles pass the smell test, the craft test. Maybe you haven't learned about that yet. Maybe you have. But basically, they're saying that the information that is in these articles is written by people who know what they're talking about. They've written about it in a way that you should be able to understand, and they're giving you information that is scientifically or factually correct. So now I have 1,100 articles that I can look at. And so I'm going to start reading the titles of these articles and asking myself, would this article possibly have information that would be useful for me for my particular project? Now, I'm not going to obviously go through pages and pages of these articles, but I am going to just choose a couple for you because I want to show you how to use the database, and you're going to have to go in and find the information that you need. So here's an article that is talking about the effects of global warming on the Arctic. And so I'm going to click on the title of that article. And here it brings the article up for me to read. There we go. Stretched thin on thin ice. Now let's say that I read this article and decided that I actually do need this. I have different options. I can save this to my Google Drive. I can print it. I can email it to myself. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save it to my Google Drive. Okay, and that should be there. But just in case, and I'm worried about this, I am going to email this article to myself. This is really pretty cool. This is the most important thing for you to do. So I am going to email this article to myself. I'm going to put in my school email address here. And I'm going to write global warming, thin ice. And then I want to say, I want the PDF, I want the HTML full text, and then citation format. Most likely your teacher is going to want you to use MLA. There are other options that are available, but for middle school, usually in high school, MLA should be just fine. And then I'm going to send this article to myself. Why do I do this? Because this way I don't have to come back to the database and look for articles that I already found. This way I already collected them as part of my email, and so now I know that I will find them waiting for me in my email, and then I can read them, I can print them if I want, and then I can highlight them, I can paraphrase them, I can write note cards from them, and all of that great stuff. So once I've done that, notice I didn't read all the article, I just read a little bit of the article. I'm going to go back to my result list. Maybe. There we go. And I'm going to look again and see if there's another article that I want to use for this particular project. There's another one about Antarctica. Antarctica is melting. So maybe my project's going to be on the greenhouse effect and what's happening to the polar ice caps. So again, I can click on Google Drive, send that to my Google Drive, but I am definitely going to email that to myself so that I know that I have it. Okay, so that's the basics of Explora. So let's go back then to Utah's Online Library. I'm going to go back to here and let's look at the other database, Gale Reference Collection High School. Now you might think, well, why do I need to look in two different databases? Well, because the databases have different source material from each other. If you look at a Venn diagram, you'll think that there's one big circle that's EBSCO, another big circle that's Gale, and there may be a little bit that meets in the middle and is the same, but the bulk of the material from one database to the other is unique to that different database. There are a whole lot of sources of information out there that you've never been exposed to, and these databases have connected them for you. Notice that just like EBSCO, Gale has different databases that you can look at. Opposing Viewpoints is a great one if you're doing a comparison contrast, or if you're doing some kind of opposition research for like a debate or something. Power Search, however, is what we're going to use. Again, notice though, we have a biography database, we have a science database, we have a global issues database, but let's stick with the Power Search for now. So once this comes up, again, you'll see that general search bar. So I'm going to type in greenhouse effect and see what that brings up. Now this is a little bit different than the other database. This time, notice we have different results. Right now I've got the magazine results. Then if I want to see the journal results, I'll have to click on those. Same with books, news. It has images that I could look at. So if I'm doing a PowerPoint, this may be a good place for me to grab some PowerPoint images. And there's even some videos. Now I can filter my result. So publication date, I'm going to filter by publication date. So I'm going to say well, I'm just going to pick a random date for right now because I'm going to change this to 2010. Remember, because my last search was also starting with 2010. And then I'm going to pick today's date and apply that. And now that's filtered my results a little bit. That news result is still really big. And so I may have to do a search to narrow it down, like I may add melting ice caps or something like that, if that's what I decide that my research is going to be about. But now at least I can start looking through these different items and see what I want. I'm going to go into the academic journals because, again, those are the top-notch scientific materials. Or if I were doing science, then it would be, I mean, if I were doing history, it would be from history journals and those kinds of things. And I'm going to look through these and see which ones of these look the most interesting to me, the most related to what I'm doing my research on. Here is one about the Antarctic and the greenhouse effect. So I want to look at that article. I'm going to click on the title. I'm going to skim through the article and see if A, can I understand it? B, does it have something to do with my particular project? And if so, then I'm going to download it, but then I'm also going to email it to myself. Again, I'm going to email it to myself because I don't want it to come back and look for this again later. So I click on that send to. Notice I can send it to my Google Drive or I can email it. So I'm going to type in my email address. And I'm just going to copy this. I want the full text. I want the citation. So I am going to send that. Now, the other thing that I can do while I'm here is I notice this where it says cite. I can click on that and I have my choice between MLA, APA, or Chicago. And I can open a Google Doc. And I can have a new Google Doc ready to go. And I can say greenhouse effect bibliography. And then I can come back here and I can copy this and I can add that on there so that I already have this ready to go in my bibliography. If I do happen to use this article for my project, then I already have it in my bibliography. And that's important because sometimes when I was doing research to get my master's degree, I would maybe start with 30 articles in my bibliography. And by the time I was done actually doing my research, I was down to perhaps 10 articles, but I didn't have to go back and keep looking for these citations. I already had them, and so I was ready to go. Then, of course, once I've sent that to myself and I've grabbed the citation, I can go back to my results and I can look for other articles that may be also interesting for me. Here's one about Arctic sea ice. And so again, I am going to mail this to myself, to my email. I am going to click on the citation and grab that citation. And I am going to put that into my bibliography so it's ready for me to go. And so this way, my time in the database is spent gathering things that I think might be useful for my research, and then I can do the actual reading later. So that was a really quick look at the Utah's Online Library and databases and a little bit about how to use them. Hopefully we'll be back together soon and we can go more into what you need to think about when you're doing research, especially if you are just going to be Googling things on the internet. If you want to be safe, if you want to use high quality information, I would say that instead of always using Google, come to Utah's Online Library, use either or both of these databases, and you will be doing much better when it comes to the quality of your research. So good luck. I hope that everything goes well for you.